Hi, I'm Paul Mallis, partner in the law firm of Young Mallis Associates. Welcome to the Paul Squared podcast. I started my career in the district attorney's office, and in 2016, I turned my focus to exclusively defending clients charged with crimes. I created this podcast to provide an overview of the criminal law process and to answer the questions I most often get when I first meet prospective clients. My goal is to protect my clients' rights and to guide them through the stressful process of being charged with a crime. While this podcast serves to provide general guidelines around the practice areas we discuss, you should always consult directly with an attorney to make sure the specifics of your particular situation match up with the applicable laws. The decision of choosing an attorney is an important one, and you should give it careful thought before deciding. If you need representation or just have questions, please don't hesitate to contact me at 215-639-5297, or you can visit our law firm's website at www.ykacrim.com. That's ykacrim.com.
I'm excited today to bring in Paul Mallis, who's going to be talking to us through the next several episodes. Our first episode is going to be a chance for Paul to introduce himself to everyone. Paul is a partner in the firm of Young Paul Mallis Associates and largely focuses his practice areas in criminal defense area, which we'll get into. But again, episode 1 is going to be a chance for Paul to get a chance to explain himself, introduce himself, talk a little bit about his background so people understand who he is. So Paul, I've introduced you, but for the audience members out there, would you please just introduce who you are?
Absolutely. I'm Paul Mallis. I am a partner here at the law firm, head of the criminal department. My practice is exclusively criminal defense. I started my career at the district attorney's office, where I was prosecuting all types of crimes on the other side of it, from the low-level crimes, DUI, shoplifting, to the more serious crimes, assault, homicide. And so I got experience doing all types of criminal matters. And then in 2016, I switched over to doing criminal defense exclusively. So that's kind of how I started my path in this position.
And so before we dive too deep in your professional career and what you're doing today, let's talk a little bit about your background. Are you a Philly guy?
Sure. Yep. I am a Philly guy. I grew up in Bucks County, right outside of Philadelphia. Went to Council Rock. After that, I went to Penn State University, and then I graduated. I took a year off, decided kind of like which direction I wanted to go with my career, and then I landed on law school. Best decision of my life. Went to school in Michigan, best 3 years of my life, and graduated, took the bar exam, and just began practicing at that point. Yeah.
And so you're born, bred, and raised in Philly. You got the green blood running through your veins. True.
Eagles fan through and through.
I know that from previous conversations.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Bucks County. You have any siblings?
I do. I have an older sister. I am married. And yeah.
Recently married, am I correct?
Recently married. I'll show the ring.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
On that. Yes. And no children at this point in your life, correct?
No. And I'm giving my wife a shout out here by showing the ring.
Right. You better.
I better.
So you grew up, you have a sister. Your parents, if I understand correctly, your dad was in the medical profession. Is that correct?
He still is. Yep.
Okay.
He's a medical doctor. He practices right in Mayfair section of Philadelphia. He's a solo practitioner. He practices internal medicine, and God bless him, he's still practicing and he's still grinding.
And your mom, she have a career at this point?
So mom was a medical assistant for dad's company, for his practice. She has since retired from that, and now she is kind of like a diet coach. She It's kind of like a coach to people who are on a program called Optavia, which is a dieting program. It's renowned, it's nationwide, and it's cool because she has clients that are across the nation, where she engages with them, teaches them about the program, and kind of is like a mentor and a coach to those clients. So that's where she's at.
So you have two parents in the medical field, and you take
Yeah.
the complete left turn and decide to go into legal. Is there anybody in your family, extended or otherwise, that sort of influenced you to go in that direction?
In the family, no, but my dad's best friend is an attorney who was like an uncle to me growing up. And so I kind of followed in his footsteps, I guess you could say. And yeah, but nobody directly related to me is in law.
So your dad's best friend growing up, who I think you just described him like an uncle, he was an attorney. Was that, you think, the main driving factor that sort of got you interested in that? Was there any pressure from your parents to say you're going to be a doctor?
No, no, I never got pressure one way or the other. But I think growing up, it was always like, okay, well, I'm going to go into a profession like medicine or like law, and I just had no interest in medicine. Science was never my forte in school. Um, I was more interested in like analytical thinking and writing and reading. And then that coupled with, my dad's best friend, showing me, hey, this is what I do, and he would sometimes take me to court just to observe, or he would give me like an old inactive file to look at. And then you'd see like the movies, My Cousin Vinny, and all of the legal movies, and that's really what sparked my interest.
So that's interesting. So you have this influential adult in your young life that's exposing you to the law, which is outside of what your familial profession was per se. And you said you started to realize that you wanted to be in a profession, but you weren't sure what direction that was going to take you. At what age do you think, was this in high school, that you started formulating that, hey, maybe medical and the sciences are not where my brain is?
Nah, not high school. I mean, you're not really fully, your brain's not really fully developed until, at least the male brain, until you're in your like mid 20s. So I'd like to think that my male brain was developed prior to that, but I would say it was college for me. Some point, somewhere in the middle of my collegiate career, did it become like a reality that maybe I will go to law school. Maybe I will do this. Definitely not high school.
So when life was actually starting to knock on your door, you said, I better come up with a game plan at this point.
I don't know if life was knocking at my door in my college years, but it was somewhere in the back of my mind,
Gotcha.
somewhere the back door, I guess. Definitely not the front door.
Well, I remember in going to college myself saying, "Hey, I'm going to graduate
Years ago,
at
right?
some point here." Yeah, years ago at this point, back in the black and white days. But they thinking, "Hey, I'm going to have to graduate here soon and either get a job or decide I'm going to continue on to school." And for me, I continued on to law school as well, and that was something that sort of made me really stop and think about what is going to be the next thing in my life. And I'm sure at some point you hit that as well, saying, what's going to happen next, and that pushes you towards your law school studies.
Yeah, yeah. It's a big too. Like it's a big decision that you're making. So for me, I wanted to take that 1 year off between college and law school to really make sure that it's a huge financial investment. It's a huge time commitment. And it's really a huge life decision that you're entering into. So for me, I wanted a little bit of time just to confirm that this was the direction that I wanted to take my life, that I wanted to take my career. And I'm so glad that I did. I'm so glad that I chose this path because I love what I do and I love helping people. And I really enjoy this. It's my life through and through.
It's good to know when you made right decisions, even in younger years where you didn't always necessarily know why you were making the decisions you were making. Um,
Good or bad,
Good or
good or
bad.
bad decisions.
Right, right. So you graduate high school. You said you went to Penn State University. Were you at the main campus or one of the branch
So
campuses?
yeah, so started off at one of the branch campuses, Altoona, um, which actually my wife's little cousin goes to now, and it's just mind-boggling to me how big that campus has grown since when I went 100,000 years ago at this point now. Um, so I started off at a branch campus, Altoona, Pennsylvania. It's right, toward Pittsburgh, which of course and so far from Philadelphia, 4.5, 5 hours, and it was the first time that I had lived away from home, and it was in a small little area. I spent 2 years there, and then I transferred over to the main campus at State College. So for me, that was another good stepping stone before I got into like the big University Park, universities, the big school, the main campus. And then I finished my junior and senior year at the main campus.
It's great.
Yeah.
And so you graduated Penn State. You after having spent some time at Altoona, and then you got your experience seeing some whiteouts at Penn State for the last couple of years, which
Ohio State, Michigan, Purdue. Yeah, it was a
yeah,
it was a good run
some
when I was in
that's
school.
oh yeah, a great place to certainly see some sports and a wonderful school on top of that. But now you
Hmm.
say you took a year off before you went to law school. You took a year off. So what did you do in that year of contemplation?
I have to really tailor my answers here because we're on broadcast. So no, I'm kidding. Kind of. I worked in a restaurant. I've always worked in the restaurant, in the restaurant business. Growing up, I worked catering company. I worked at a Jewish deli. I worked at fine dining restaurants. When I came home from college, I had gone back into the restaurant business. I worked at a little Italian place, fine dining, right in Bucks County, and kind of just you know um, socialized, and I still work, but kind of just like live life. And then toward the latter part of that year off, I took the LSAT, which is as you know, the law school admissions test, and I studied for that. But yeah, that's kind of I was with family. I went down the shore. I did what how old was I? I guess I did what 21-year-olds do. And so I enjoyed that time.
Well,
Yeah.
that's good. So you took a break there. You sounds like you had a chance to clear your head, get
Yeah.
yourself prepared for what was next. So obviously you're thinking of
Right.
law school because you took the LSATs, which is
Right.
required to get into law school, and
It
then
is.
you went to Michigan. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I went to Thomas Cooley Law School, which is a small school in the state of Michigan, and their main campus is in Lansing, Michigan. But at the time when I had gone, they had several other campuses, one of which was in Ann Arbor. That campus has since closed since I've graduated, but that's where I went to school, which was right about a mile and a half away from the University of Michigan, but no affiliation with that school. So I packed up. I moved to Ann Arbor. I lived there for 3 years. Best experience of my life. First of all, it's the Midwest. It's great. It's scenic. It's a slower pace of life, and I really enjoyed it. Had a great time.
But the call of Philly drew you back after your experience in Michigan. So the Midwestern lore couldn't have been that strong.
Coming from Philadelphia, no Philadelphian would say that they want to and no disrespect to Midwesterns, but no Philadelphian's going to want to pick up and just move to the Midwest. We got to be close to, our Philadelphia sports, our Eagles, and, we got to come back to our roots. And so that's what I did.
So you graduate from Michigan after 3 years. So you obviously went full time, and then at this point you're graduating, and you don't have a family law practice to come back to, or something to jump straight into. So what's next for you? How do you land where you land? What are you doing? Did you have an idea that criminal law was going to be what you were going to get yourself into?
Yeah, I did. I really enjoyed criminal law and constitutional law, which goes with criminal law, the Fourth Amendment. I knew nobody, and nobody knew who Paul Mallis was. Every law firm in and around the Philadelphia area, they were looking at students from Drexel University or Penn or Widener University or Temple University, the law schools, that is. They were not looking at Thomas Cooley Law School in Little Ann Arbor, Michigan. And so nobody knew who I was. My last semester of law school, I took an externship at the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office for 3 months or however long the semester was. They called them terms. And so it was that experience that kind of exposed my name to judges and lawyers and prosecutors, and I really capitalized on that 3.5 month experience. I got names and numbers, email addresses. I wrote to people, but even after I finished that externship and then took the bar exam and passed and became a lawyer, people still didn't know who Paul Mallis was. Nobody was hiring at that time. If they were hiring, again, they were not looking at, people like me that went to school in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They were looking at local students. So it took a really long time. I got a job at a big PI firm in Philadelphia. I was doing paperwork and things like that. I did not like the job at all. It was not for me. I was there for about 5 months until I got the calling for a job opening at the Bucks County District Attorney's Office. And that's really where my career started, because at that point, I was in court I was in the game. I was in court every single day. Judges knew who I was. Defense attorneys knew who I was. People knew who I was. People were learning who I was, and they were learning my name. And then after an 18-month period of time working as a prosecutor, then I made the decision to switch into private practice, into the firm where I am now. And it took a long time, even at that point, to really get my name out there.
Yeah, and I think, and listeners may not appreciate that, when you come out of law school, number one, none of us as lawyers coming out of law school really know what we're doing at that point. You can have learned all the book smarts, you can have taken all these classes, graduated at the top of your class, but it's the life's experiences of getting in there and doing it that really teach you how to be a good advocate, a good lawyer, and all the rest of it. And not to set aside that research and your ability to write and all those things are very important, because it's a critical portion of practicing in any law. But to get in there and do it is what's critical. And I think a lot of people also don't appreciate. They think, all right, well, a lawyer spends all day in court. That's not true. Most do not.
Not at all.
Even you mentioned you were in a big PI firm. My experience in working with PI firms over the years are that they're rarely in trial, and those are firms that are litigators. It's because their goal is to settle a case and to get it done and to not have to show up in court. So if you want trial experience, the fastest way to get in there and do that is sort of the path you took, which is get involved with a public agency that is going to be in trial all the time, going to be in front of judges, going to be comfortable with the contents of a courtroom. And that's what you did.
Right. And I should say this too. It's not like I just applied to one district attorney's office. I applied to public defender's offices in and around the Philadelphia area. I'm even further out. I would say I took like a 50 mile square radius and applied to multiple public defender's offices, multiple district attorney's offices, application after application after application, and just nobody was hiring. So it wasn't just like I decided, oh, I'm going to leave this PI firm and apply to the Bucks County DA's office. I'm going to get a job. That's not how it happened. So it took a lot of time, for that job opening to come about. But yeah, I mean, most lawyers are not in a courtroom. If you're not doing criminal law as a prosecutor or defense attorney, you're doing corporate law, you're doing PI stuff or wills, you're in an office. You're not really going to court. I really enjoyed that aspect of the job, being in court every single day. Yeah,
And did you find that getting in court, I mean, I think half the battle is just getting comfortable with you're in a courtroom. It's a stressful situation
yeah,
for attorneys, just like it is the clients, that until you've done it a bunch of times and understand what's happening, it's the simple things like the first time you're ever a lawyer and you go in a courtroom, it's like, oh my God, where do I sit? Am I at
yeah,
that table or this? It's those little things
yeah,
where
yeah,
it's like just the
yeah.
commonality of saying, "Hey, I'm comfortable with this setting," that you don't get any other way than from doing it. Do you feel like your early experiences of being pushed into the courtroom in those jobs really gave you that comfort level?
Definitely, definitely. But I still have discomfort and anxiety and panic going into court
Sure.
after all this time. I mean, who doesn't? But you have to harness that anxiety and that energy and focus on what's right in front of you,
Right.
and not let any of the outside stuff get in your mind. But yeah, certainly as a young attorney, a brand new attorney, being in a courtroom, speaking in front of a jury, speaking in front of judges, and thinking on the fly like that, that takes a long time to get used to.
Yeah, and when you started, so before you landed where you are now, and we'll get there in a second.
Yeah,
So you were in the prosecutor's office for an externship with the Philadelphia DA's office.
right,
Then you had this short stint with the PI firm, and then you get hired at the DA's office
right,
in Bucks County. And
right,
and it wasn't that you said, "Hey, I'm only applying for a DA's job." It sounded like you were applying for a public defender's job. A lot of these sort of governmental positions. But could you
right.
describe for people first of all, what's the role of a DA? And what would a typical day look like for you in that role? Like, what were you doing when you showed up for your office on Monday morning?
Sure. Well, the DA's role is to serve the people, right? To suppress crime, to be an advocate for victims. You have to have patience, and you have to be able to triage cases because you're dealing with at any given time hundreds of files at any moment, and so there's a lot. It's multidimensional, the job. There's a lot of different roles that you play, but for me, I was doing preliminary hearings. I was going out to the local district courts and doing these hearings. I was doing trials. Like I said, you really need to triage, the cases because there's so much volume. I was also, approving search warrants, that were authored by police officers. I was taking calls, office calls. I was taking after hours calls, emergencies that would happen. They called it night duty or weekend duty. So I don't think it was like, okay, well, this is what like Monday morning looked like. It was every day was kind of
Anything and
this,
everything. Yeah.
yeah, the same thing, kind of every day. It was very monotonous in that respect, I would say.
But at least in your first exposure to the criminal law process, you were on the side of prosecuting the cases with the police,
Right.
that you were not defending criminal defense attorneys at that point. You were learning that side of the criminal defense process from what is now the opposite side of what you're typically engaged on.
Right, right. So I was doing the complete opposite. So, and that's what's kind of enabled me to do my current job as a defense attorney. What's enabled me to do this job so effectively is having been on the other side as a prosecutor and learn how the government, right, how the government prosecutes a case, how the government begins an investigation, goes through the investigation, and brings a criminal action against somebody. I have that inside information, that inside knowledge now, which has empowered me to dissect the case from a prosecutorial perspective and obviously as a criminal defense attorney. So it's given me the power to look at a case from both sides, really, which is invaluable.
Yeah, I would imagine. I would imagine just
Yeah,
understanding the inner workings and being able to see your opponent on the other side and say, I understand where they're coming from. I understand what they're thinking. I understand where their pressures are coming from. That has to be very valuable for you to be able to say, I can talk their language.
that's funny. I'm reading. I like to read in my spare time, and so I'm reading the Lincoln Lawyer series.
Right.
Michael Connolly is the author, and it's about this lawyer who it's so relatable to me because he's in his car and he's traveling around to court and client to client, and he's in trial and he's dissecting the cases and thinking about like how the prosecutor what move the prosecutor is going to make next. And it's so relatable to me because that's really what this job is. You have to it's like a chess game. You have to
Right.
anticipate when you're in court. You need to know the moves that your opponent's going to make before they make them, and that's really what makes the lawyer a good lawyer. Is thinking outside the box.
Well, and I would imagine, I mean, we're all constrained by the law. The law is the law. There's obviously the facts as they apply to the law can be
Right.
gray. One side says it's
Hmm.
yellow, the other side says it's red. There can be those issues, but personalities of who you're dealing with, I would imagine, often are as big an influence on this. And if you don't understand the personalities of who you're dealing with or understand what they might be, the pressures driving behind them, you could be missing out on a critical factor in getting a case resolved.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Yeah, you have to know it all. You have to know from both sides, and
Yeah.
that's really what makes the difference between an average lawyer and a good lawyer, in my opinion.
No, I agree. I think if you lose sight of that, then again, you can be the best technical. I know and can cite every statutory piece of law.
Yeah,
That won't win it. There are lots of judges out there who are say that's great. Yeah, I understand the law too, but let's get back to the facts here and talk about what's
right.
going on.
Let's get to the analysis. Yeah,
Right, right. And if
exactly.
you can't speak like a human being, that doesn't help you in those situations. But so you get all this experience of seeing the side of criminal law from the prosecuting side, understanding sort of the inner workings, what's going on there. Hey, you can, I'm guessing at this point, envision yourself in some of these men and women's shoes and saying, I understand what's going on with you. You've got a heavy caseload, you got all these things going on, and learning how to use that to help defend your clients to the best of your capabilities. So you get all this great experience. I'm assuming at this point you discover that you want to stay in the practice of criminal law because you then come to the private practice of criminal law. And can you talk about that? And I think you mentioned that's around 2016 when that sort of switch happens.
Yeah, and I should backtrack too because so when I left the district attorney's office, when I left the Bucks County DA's office, I actually had kind of a stepping stone between that office and my current firm. I was offered a position as a law associate at a very small firm who did all civil work, employment discrimination, and some PI stuff. And I was there for about 3.5 weeks.
Okay.
It was less than a month, just not for me. And so I came to this firm, and that's where I kind of shined, if you will, because it kept me in the game. It kept me in court every single day, and it kept me exposed to judges and exposed to lawyers. That's really where my passions always lied, is in criminal law. Yeah,
And so I think it's around 2016 where you landed the current firm where you're a partner now, correct?
right, right.
Okay, so
2016.
2016. So I just know this and having worked with your firm for a while that you sort of jumped right in it. You started taking cases. You used all your experience from the other side to fashion the best defenses for your clients on that side, and grew and grew the practice. And now you're a partner in the firm, and you guys are managing lots of cases in the course of a year. I know you stay extremely busy, so obviously you're doing something correct. And I know there's a lot of times where clients are recommending friends and family to you that are saying, "Hey, I have someone who's dealing with a similar situation. Can you help them?" And you can't ask for any better advocacy or review than something like that. So, the areas that you got into, and it seems like you've continued to expand this and done a lot of different things. Um, how have you seen that path of the last 8 years at this point go? I mean, it's probably been a whirlwind with how quickly things have grown. And you talk a little bit about how that's been.
Sure. Yeah, when I started here at the law firm, I was certainly not a partner. I was an associate, an employee, and I took everything that came through the door. I kept myself very busy, every single case, and it was that, it was taking everything that came in that got my name out there to other clients, and it just kind of spun from there. I mean, it took a long time, but you do a good job for one client, that client will give your name to six other people, and then one of those six people gets in trouble, or their neighbor gets in trouble, your name goes out to them, and it kind of is just like a tree that keeps growing, multiple branches and vines and leaves, and the tree is endless and it keeps going. But I took it one step further. I needed to be able to bring in independent business, not just like, the business coming in through the law firm's marketing. I wanted to really get my name out in some sort of way that was independent from the law firm. And so I started meeting other, not just lawyers, but criminal defense lawyers who did the same exact thing that I was doing, but I established a relationship with them where they began referring me clients. So it was outside of the law firm, it was independent of this practice. And that's added a whole new layer, to my exposure, to people. And then, those clients would give my name out to other people. So, it was those relationships that I still have maintained, and some of whom have even become friends of mine. And so, it was bringing in clients from those outside referral attorneys that really helped me grow even more. Yeah.
Well, and something to be proud of when you have other professionals in the space that, could do this work themselves, but
Right.
trust you and enough
Right.
to say,
Right.
hey, I will put my client in front of this person. I know
Right.
they're going to do a wonderful job, and it's a
Right.
good fit. That's an impressive thing for sure.
Some lawyers, right, if they get a case or a client contacts that lawyer and it's going to be like a complicated issue, and the lawyer, is just not up for it. And there's no fault, there's no problem with that. Some lawyers, just don't want to go to trial. They're fine with just resolving a case. Um, then that client, they send that client to me, and we have the manpower, so to speak, to handle that client's complex issue and to handle that client's case. So yeah, I pride myself on that.
Yeah, or sometimes they're gonna be gone for weeks, or they're gonna, their current caseload is too
Yeah,
heavy that they couldn't serve another client. There can be lots of reasons for it, but it goes back to that point of saying when they look around and say, "Hey, I got to land this someone who would do as good a job or better than I could even do," and for them to refer those to you, that's something you have to be proud of.
I have a friend of mine. He's an attorney, and he last night actually he had a call from a potential client up in the Lehigh Valley area, which he doesn't really practice in, so he has no relationships in that area. And he sent that client to me because he knows that I do have relationships in that area, and so and that client retained us. So that's just like one example. Or another friend of mine who's an attorney who was away over the Christmas holiday with his wife and kids, and just didn't have the ability to take calls. So he sent them to me. So it's it could be a multitude of reasons why they're sending the client to me, but whatever it is, I just appreciate it. Appreciate people keeping my name in mind.
All right, so Paul, we just talked about all the things that you did to get into the firm and to help grow it. How it's become a very healthy practice area for the firm in terms of both what you're doing for your clients and the number of cases that you're handling and things like that. But I want to turn our attention a little bit towards, you know, you can grow something, you can make it big, you can do all these things and have lots of cases, but I think it would sort of coincide with what we talked about earlier, that if you don't love what you're doing, if you don't find fulfillment in what you're doing, it doesn't really matter. Eventually that house of cards will fall. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit. Can you tell us about what are some of the most fulfilling things that you feel that you do, and how has this impacted, some of your clients' lives, just as a couple examples?
It's funny. I came into the office this morning and I had a Christmas card. It was really a thank you card from a client who I just got out of jail only 2 weeks ago before Christmas. He was incarcerated for a crime that he should not have been incarcerated for. And he just left me I didn't even know that the card was here. And it was just like a thank you, a heartfelt thank you. It's those types of clients that really make the job worth it. I had another client, he was looking at a mandatory 3-year prison sentence, and I was able to get it down to 3 months of jail time. He just got released earlier this month. I honestly, I kind of forgot about him at this point, right? But he reached out to me, just a text message. Every client has my personal cell phone. Just thanking me, and it's like those kinds of things that really make the job worth it. There are other clients who are less than thankful for the work that we do here. But, I would say for, every couple clients that might be kind of less than grateful for what we do, you get that one client that is really takes it to heart with what we do. And that's what makes the job really worth it to me. And that's why I love what I do.
And I would imagine there's lots of practices of the area of law where it's shuffling paperwork around. It's, getting one thing filed for something else. Well, there isn't a personal touch. You can't get more personal than criminal defense. And that doesn't mean that, listen, sometimes people break the law, and they knowingly break the law, and they have to face the consequences for it. There are other times where people have made a mistake. And for whatever reason, that the mistake is going to cost them greatly, cost their family greatly. You got people with kids and other people relying upon them for their living. And so, the net effect of criminal charges filed against one person, I would guess rarely ever just affects one person.
Right.
And your ability to help that person and say, look, you have to take ownership for the things you've done. However, there still is a compassion level. There's a reality level. Give people second chances, allow them. And to use your example of the guy you mentioned who gives you a Christmas card, who got out of jail, a couple weeks before Christmas. I mean, if this guy I have no idea who he is, but if he has children and family and wants to spend Christmas, I mean, how impactful, important is it? That's why he sent that card to you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really impactful. I mean, it keeps me going, and it makes the job worth it. So yeah, it leaves as much of an impact as I left on that client, and his family. That Christmas card left an even bigger impact on me.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and just to give an idea, so maybe talking about since your time 2016, where you started in the firm you are, do you have an idea of how many cases you've handled?
I get that question a lot. I, and we try to break it down too. It's like, okay, well, as lawyers, we're not good at math at all, but we try to break it down. So if I'm doing this many cases per week, this many cases per month, this many cases per year, and then you multiply that by the number of years I've been here, I don't know, over 1,000, well over
Hundreds for
1,000.
sure. Yeah.
Oh, for sure, 100. I mean, oh, definitely. I would say over 1,000 at this
Okay.
point. Yeah, that's a fair number. Yeah, no, I was some lawyers say they've done 10,000, 20,000 cases. That's nonsense. But I would say a healthy number is probably a little over 1,000 for me. Yeah,
Well, if you get as old as I am and keep doing what you're doing, you may get in the tens and 20,000s cases.
100,000 by that point.
100,000, right?
Yeah.
See, your math's not as bad as you claim it to be.
No.
So you've handled a lot of cases. I think you mentioned earlier that it's kind of run the gamut in terms of the types of cases that you do, and we'll get into in other episodes talk about sort of some of the more common types of cases and what goes into those so that we can answer the questions you most often get. But I'm guessing it's run the gamut from traffic infractions all the way up to serious felony cases. Is that correct?
100%. Yeah. Traffic infractions, local ordinance violations to like really serious sex crimes, violent crimes, drug crimes. So it's run the whole gambit, which I like because it keeps things interesting for me.
And
sometimes you need a break from like the big serious stuff and go down to like a traffic matter just to change it up a little bit.
right. Not something that's not so life or death altering type
Right,
of scenario.
exactly.
Do you find that there are more of certain types of cases that you regularly see come across your desk just as an average, or is it a mixed bag?
Probably a mixed bag. I'm not like the guy that just does like exclusively DUIs or, for me, but that's not to say that another criminal defense attorney is just, not really a mixed bag. They're doing just like one thing. For me, I'm doing kind of the whole gambit, always doing the whole gambit. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, Paul. So we're about at the end of episode 1 here, and I think
Okay.
you certainly gave some great background on who you are, and that's important. And at least in my mind, that if people are going to consider hiring someone like yourself to represent them in a critical time of need, where they're going to have to be brutally honest with you, and you're going to have to be able to be brutally honest with them, it's important they know that they match with you, that they understand who you are, and that they feel comfortable that you're going to represent them to your fullest extent. So appreciate you giving the insights of who Paul Mallis is in this. But I'm going to end with this one question for yourself. So take yourself back to young Paul Mallis. He's graduated high school. He's about to start at Altoona, Penn State, and he's 18 years old. And you're sitting here in your chair today on this podcast, and you can reach back into time and say, hey, Paul Mallis, 18-year-old Paul Mallis, let me give you one piece of advice. What would that advice be?
It's a very loaded question. And first of all, I should say I still think of myself as relatively young, but thank you for that.
Right.
I guess be open to all types of paths that life could take you on. For me, it took a lot of paths to get to where I am now, and there was no direct path. And so I guess the advice I would give is just because you don't get there right away, it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. Keep the drive going, keep the motivation going, and keep the nose to the grindstone, because you will get there. And that's the advice that I would give myself at 18 years old.
Be patient, young Mallis. You'll appreciate where you are when you're 40 years old.
Correct.
Good.
Patience is a virtue.
Yes. Well, thank you, Paul. Hope this gave everybody a good chance to meet you and understand who you are. In our next episode, we're going to be getting into introduction to the criminal process and talking generally how this works. So we'll see you here back shortly in the next episodes and talk a bit about that. Appreciate it. And thank you for everyone for listening.
Great. Thank you.